Rudolph's group had gone out holding 2 guns and 1 master key, but those had been lost. It was more than clear by now that they had been stolen by the culprit. Since the windows were closed with shutters, they wouldn't open even if the culprit had the master key. They sealed the front door and all the other doors to the outside with chains, and further blocked them with sofas and tables. Even if the culprit decided to break in through violent means, it wouldn't be easy for them.
台風が今となってはむしろ幸いかもしれんな。もしも晴れていたなら、ゲストハウスに放火するという手もあり得たかもしれん。
そもそも台風でなかったなら、午前中に船が来てたわ。それを不幸中の幸いと言えるかは微妙ね。
エヴァさん、体の具合はいかがですか？無理をされないようにしてください。
ありがとう。熱はまだ感じるけど、そんなことを言ってる場合じゃないわ。子供のためにも今は寝込んでる場合じゃない。
After crying so much in front of Hideyoshi's body, Eva had now gained a strong self-awareness that she was a mug, and her expression conveyed a strong will. Actually, her fever still hadn't gone down, and she was aware of that. Whenever she wasn't galvanizing herself, she felt the fever starting to make her mind hazy again. By this point, the first floor was a final line of defense made by Kraus, Natsuki, and Eva. And the children and the guest, Nanjo, had been strongly warned not to carelessly come downstairs. If the culprit used a ladder or something, it probably wouldn't be impossible for them to attack from upstairs. But it wouldn't be easy for them to break those sturdy shutters from such an unstable position. It was comparatively safer upstairs compared to downstairs. Bella and George had hoped to remain downstairs as well, to fight in the worst case scenario, but Eva had rejected that. In her mind, George was now her only family. It seemed that she didn't even want to expose him to the danger of coming downstairs to the first floor. Kraus and Natsuki could also understand that feeling. A great deal of time had now passed since they once again barricaded themselves in. In the cousins' room upstairs, Badler, George, and Jessica were sitting dazed. The area is not even registering the TV that had been left on. Yeah. Poor things. Not even the power of Kamen Rider can distract them, even for a little, in these hard times. For a while, Nanjo had been with them, and had tried to send them words to cheer them up. But when he realized that he might actually be having the opposite effect, he disappeared into his own room upstairs. George kept looking dazedly at the photographs inserted in his notebook. They were from the time he had taken a vacation to Okinawa with Shana. Shana's happy smile was contained in those photographs. George could remember the temperature and the humidity, the warmth and strength of the wind, and even what he had been talking about with her at the time those photos had been taken, as clearly as though it had been yesterday. So to George, they weren't simply photos, but a door to bring back warm memories. In this room, even though the sound of the typhoon and the TV should have entered George's hearing, it was the scenery of Okinawa he had seen with her, and her laughing voice that reached his eyes and his ears. After meeting Shana, George had made the decision to be reborn. He had sworn to separate himself from the timid person he had once been. Easily caught up in the atmosphere, unable to refuse a request, and easily used by those around him. He had resolved himself to become a strong man who would make her life even more joyous. So, if he hadn't met Shannon, the man called Ushiromiya George would probably have lived a very different life. And the George of that different life surely wouldn't have been as excellent a man as he now is. The way he was now, he was for the sake of Shannon. But if that same Shannon was now gone, he found himself wondering why he exists. Isn't it completely meaningless? A deep, deep sadness as though he himself had become empty. That feeling had tormented him the whole time. However, until Beller had told him, he hadn't been aware of the feeling himself. He finally remembered that he should have cried much, much more. So, he had cried. And just like Beller, he had cried himself dry. By now, his eyes were bright red and swollen, and he could not cry anymore. So George did his best to change his way of thinking. He decided to think that he was not meaningless, that he should be grateful to Shannon for giving such a character. Dead lives, they're not revived. He should have to get over being separated from his beloved. If he were to come after Shannon by killing himself, she would surely be deeply dejected. It would be the same the other way around too. If he died, and Shannon chased after him, throwing away her own life, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself. So, he chose to surpass his emotions of sadness and anger, and decided to thank her. Meaning Shannon had made his days rich and full, and had taught him the meaning of working hard for other people's sake. As a result, she had shaped him into the person he wanted to be. He thought he should thank her for that. By doing that, he tried to quell his sadness. But each time he did, he remembered Shannon's smile. He knew it, logically. He understood that grieving any more than this would only make her grieve in heaven. Yet, he couldn't stop his sadness. Beller muttered. It was as though he was speaking on behalf of all humans. He probably hadn't been asking anyone, but Jessica answered.
別れはどんな形でもいつも悲しいさ。でもそれが例えば老いであるとか何かの時間であるとかあらかじめ約束されていていつか訪れる別れであると分かっているものはその悲しみを長い時間をかけてあらかじめ薄めておくことができる。それを許されないから突然の不幸は悲しいんだろうよ。
なるほどな。そりゃ病気にでもかかって何年も昏睡状態になってりゃ少しずつ心の整理もついてくだろうけど、ある日突然じゃ その暇もねえもんな。
本来なら数年をかけて薄めるべき悲しみが一度に押し寄せる。そりゃ辛いわけさ。時には人の生涯に傷を残すほど深い悲しみを与えることもあるかもしれない。
生涯に傷を残すほどか。
じいさまのオカルト趣味もさ、そうささやかれてたんだよな。例のベアトリーチェって愛人を大昔に亡くして、それが悲しくて悲しくて立ち直れなくて、それで死者を蘇らせるためのオカルトの研究に残りの人生を全て捧げるようになったのではないかって、そうささやかれてた。
だとしたらじいさまは最後の土壇場でその奇跡を成し遂げたな。犯人は蘇ったベアトリーチェで、じいさまは殺される瞬間に再会できたってことになるぜ。
But at the cost of an entire family. I mean, not just ending their lives, but also in the way they have become, especially the siblings, the servants. Him not even caring one bit about them, all for the sake of a woman who also was affected horribly by him. I had my moments of sympathy for him at the beginning, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, as of now, I would have so many bad things to say about him, but I am restraining myself. I am definitely restraining myself. And this ain't the right time, so.
自分で蘇らせて、それに殺されるとは皮肉な話さ。
それでもおじいさまは会えたんだろうね。人生の半分を賭してもう一度会いたいと願った女性に、わずかなひとときとはいえ再会できたんだろうね。
丸焼きにされちまったけどな。人生の半分をかけた研究にしてはちょいと割の合わない成果だろうぜ。
そんなことはないよ。たとえほんのひとときであったとしても、愛した女性に再会できたおじいさまは幸せだったはずさ。仮に生命の摂理に逆らった罪を神に咎められて、その身を焼かれ地獄に落とされたとしても、その見返りの再会がほんのわずかな時間だったとしてもね。
上司兄さん、
神の怒りに触れてこの身を焼かれようとも構わない。わずかな時間でもいいからシャノンを再び蘇らせてくれるなら、僕は残りの人生すべてをおじいさまと同じ研究に捧げるよ。
In my eyes, that is not a good idea. To follow on Kinzo's footsteps. Like, despite how much you really want to, George. I would surely not recommend that. To follow on his footsteps.
5分でいいからシャノンともう一度言葉を交わしたい。1分でもいいから。それと引き換えに全ての人生を捧げても僕は構わない。
兄貴。
When Mallory and Jessica realized that their pointless discussion was hurting George, they had no choice but to shut their mouths. George directed his thoughts at Kinzo's life. I saw him sacrifice half of his life to research that no one could understand. And on the last day of his life, he would revive the person he loved most, and probably succeed in his reunion in his final moments. I don't know how much time they were able to spend together. I don't know whether they were given an hour or just 5 minutes. However, in that moment, all that time he had sacrificed for his research must have been rewarded. Even though he spent decades to gain it, that small amount of time must have been enough to reward him. Until today, I never believed in the occult or magic or anything. Somewhere in my heart, I even made fun of grandfather's research as nothing more than an indulgence. However, I won't make fun of it anymore. No, to the contrary, I strongly believe that it does exist. If that power of belief can become miracles, I'll probably throw away all my studies up until today, and spend the rest of my life from today onwards studying magic. Give me the power of magic, and a miracle which lets me meet Shannon again.
ごめんよみんな。僕もどうかしてる。魔法で死者が蘇るくらいだったら世界中の人々が魔法を学ぶだろうね。でも現実にはそんなことはない。誰も学ばない。死者が魔法では蘇らないって知っているから。ごめんよ、妙なことを言い出して。僕のせいでおかしな空気になっちゃったね。みんなだって辛いだろうに。気を使わせてごめん。
Even though I did it to divert myself from my sadness, maybe I did say something strange. If I keep talking about something so weird, I'm sure it won't heal their sadness. But even so, that doesn't mean that I can withstand this silence.
僕は下に行ってもう一杯コーヒーをもらってくる。うちの母さん、コーヒーの入れ方にはこだわりがあるんだよ。みんなもおかわりはいるかい？
Betterkun and Jessica-chan lightly shook their heads. Without being any more persistent than that, I took my mug and left the room. Alrighty then, Georgie. I did visit Dr. Nanja's room to ask whether he wanted any more coffee as well, but he too said that he didn't want any more. It seemed as though my mother's orthodox method of making coffee wasn't universally appreciated. Eva making coffee. Now that is a nice sight to see. One time, I had Shannon drink some that I brewed by that method. But she told me that, while it was delicious, it was a little strong. If I remember her words. Or maybe she didn't want to hurt your feelings, so she sugarcoated it.
Shannon.
It's no good. Even though I left the room to change my mood, that image of Shannon's face that's filling my head hasn't faded in the slightest. The fun days I shared with her becoming more and more vivid. And I felt saddened that I was not even allowed to see her dead face. According to our parents, it's as though she was killed with something like a gun or spear. I'm sure they were just trying to console me, but they had said that her face in death had been very beautiful and peaceful. I wonder if she is wearing the engagement ring I gave her last night. If she accepted my engagement, she should have it on the ring finger of her left hand. Last night, our heads were both full of each other, and we weren't composed at all. Shannon had accepted the engagement semi-boldly, but she might have regretted that as a rash action once she cooled her head. She might have taken the ring off. I wonder if she has the ring on now. Something tells me that she still has, Georgie. Something tells me that she still has. I at least want to be sure of that much. I want to know her final feelings. However, even if I do check that, it's not that if she'll be revived. I wonder what will happen to her body. After the autopsy, it will probably be immediately cremated. And then, I'll never be able to see her face. Even her dead face, for all eternity.
僕はシャノンを失ったショックで少しおかしくなってるのかな。
I don't want Shannon's body to be burned. If she's burned, she'll turn to ash, and never again will it be possible for her to revive. They say that cremation is disliked in Western tradition, because on the day of resurrection, there will be no body to revive. And because of that, it seems that great criminals in Western history were often cremated after execution as a punishment, and their ashes were sometimes scattered in rivers and such. In other words, to Western people, death is nothing more than a sleep until the resurrection. It is essential that a corpse is left after death.
つまりそれは西洋人は死者が蘇る奇跡の存在を知っていたからなんだ。でも日本にはその奇跡がなかったから焼いてしまうんだ。
Now I understand. I understand why grandfather idolized the Western occult. Wow. That could be one motive, yeah. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if George is right, and if Kinzo goes by this mentality, then Bato's body, the Kuadorian Beatrice's body, or what's left of her at this point, must be somewhere. Somewhere only Kinzo knows. And it can very well be possible that Kinzo used her body for this resurrection, even though we don't know of that. We only know the epitaph part, but we still don't know what Kinzo did to create this epitaph slash magic that is used to revive Beatrice. Like, what are the steps and all that? From the beginning, it had all been only for that reason. And just to revive the person dear to him. Grandfather spent the rest of his remaining life researching the Western occult. The situation surrounding us right now is abnormal. Grandfather revived his beloved Beatrice, and that Beatrice had carried out a terrible serial murder, with chains of locked rooms that were impossible without the use of magic. And the Golden Witch Beatrice, the incarnation of the miracle of the Western occult, and also the culprit who killed Shannon. I should hate that being, and yet, for some reason, I want to cling to the hope she represents. I wonder if she could use that miraculous magic that Grandfather spent his life espousing to revive Shannon. According to the Ushiramiya family legend, Grandfather met with her long ago and was given a vast quantity of gold. And then, if I also met her, instead of gold, would she give me Shannon's life? Your turn. She could impose any kind of devil's contract. For that, I will sacrifice all my remaining life. George probably couldn't have believed or noticed that. Right behind him, the witch herself stood, listening to his voiceless wish. Oh? Battle? Beatrice had been listening to everything George and the others had to say since their discussion just now in the cousin's room. Better had told her that she didn't know the weight of a human's life, and wanted to understand that in her own way. She had stealthily visited and listened to their discussion.
それが願いだというのか。それを叶えれば、わらわは魔女だと認められるのか。
Better looked at the palms of both of her hands. She had handed over most of her previously surging magic power when the new witch had succeeded in the name of Endless Witch. Of course, even now her magic power still made her worthy of being called a witch, but it did not even compare to her previous strength.
無限の魔法などなくとも、わらわは千年に名を轟かす大魔女であるぞ。死者を蘇らすなど、造作もないことよ。
Inside her head, she thought about several magic methods for reviving the dead. Even magic that she could do easily in the past would be difficult with her current magic power. She thought of something, then clicked her tongue and repeated this several times. In the end, she finally thought of a single spell. But that was a spell that she couldn't use by herself. It was a spell that witches with weak power used, that relied on the aid of others. Does this mean that you're gonna need George for this one? I mean, I cannot say that I'm very fond of the idea of George following on Kinzo's footsteps for the rest of his life. Like, maybe Shannon being revived right now is a better idea if Beatrice helps him. I mean, maybe it will help her, but I'm still having mixed feelings in regards to George. Like, I don't know. I guess I'll have to see for myself now. In the past, Battle had looked down upon that type of magic. Therefore, she frantically tried to think if there wasn't any other possible spell. But in the end, she couldn't think of one, and slumped over in self-derision. And then, careful not to surprise him, she softly called out. Softly, to George's heart.
後ろ宮ジョージ、わらわの声が聞こえるか。
聞こえるとも。あなたは誰だい？本当に魔女のベアトリーチェ？それとも僕の悲しみが生んだ幻想なのか？もしも前者だったなら僕の願いを聞いてほしい。そして後者なら僕をそっとしておいてほしい。
Conversations in the world of mind are a lot like those in a dream. When you dream, have you ever had the experience of casually accepting something that would have been absurd in the real world? The conversation in this world was like that. So even though a witch appeared and started talking to George, he was not surprised.
わらわの黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェである。本来わらわとそなたはこうして会話を交わすことなどできぬ。しかしそなたがわらわのことを強く意識し会話を望むからこうして互いのチャンネルを合わせることができる。
シャノンを殺したのがあなたなのか？あなたを名乗る何者かの仕業なのか？ただあなたが本当の魔女として存在しているならばどんな対価にも応じる。僕の命を望むなら今すぐに捧げてもいい。どうかシャノンを生き返らせてほしい。それが無理ならせめてわずかの間 話をさせてくれるだけでもいい。お願いだ。
対価はいらぬ。その願い。
本当にシャノンを。
うん。だが反言の魔法を扱うには今のわらわには魔力が足りない。だからそなたの手を借りねばならぬ。
僕にできることならどんなことでも。それが僕の心臓を今すぐこの場で取り出すことであったとしても、僕は躊躇しない。
そんなものいらぬというのに。わらわは魔法を唱える。さすれば冥府の扉に隙間ができよう。だが今のわらわにはその隙間よりシャノンの魂を連れ出せるほどの力はない。しかしシャノンのことを強く思うそなたなら、その思いを魔力に変えて彼女の魂を必ずや連れ戻せるだろう。どうだ、わらわを手伝うか。
手伝うとも。シャノンの命が蘇るなら僕は何を失うことも恐れない。
George's fists shook in silence. Then he slowly regained consciousness. He had been absentmindedly standing near the window in the hall the whole time, his mug still in his hand. And the witch from his dream was still there.
そんな夢じゃない。
Yeah, you're finally realizing it, eh, Georgie?
静かにせよ。
え、
今のわらわはとても脆い。この上さらに他の人間まで現れたら姿を保ちきれぬ。そなたの願いは叶えるから今は沈黙せよ。よいか。
George covered his mouth with both hands, forcefully nodding several times. As he did, he almost dropped the mug he was holding. George frantically juggled it around and caught it. The hell are you doing? Juggling with a cup. Is this your attempt at doing magic? He was afraid that if it fell to the floor and made a loud sound, the witch's form might disappear like a bubble popping. He softly set the mug on the floor and stared once again at the witch in front of him. Her form didn't disappear. It wasn't a dream.
さあ、シャノンが眠る客室へ行くぞ。そなたの思いの力にて彼女の魂を連れ戻すのだ。
行くってどうやって？下には母さんたちがいる。表へ出るのを許してくれるわけがない。それにあなたはさっき他の人間が現れたら姿を保てないと言わなかったかい？
そういえばそうだったな。下にはクラウスたちがおった。それでは確かに下へ降りられぬな。ならば一階へ降りずに屋敷へ行けばいいではないか。簡単な話よ。
Bato laughed, as though she had thought of a pleasant prank. And with her golden pipe, she lightly tapped the window with its shutter closed. When she did, 3 gold butterflies appeared from the pipe and opened the lock on the window, as though melting it. Then, the window opened without a sound. The shutter beyond it was exactly the same. Oh my. Are we actually gonna fly all the way over there? Oh, as long as gravity is with us. The clasp unset itself, also without making a sound, and it quietly opened. The window opened, exposing the wind and rain outside the mansion. Perhaps because of the direction or something related to the construction of the building, and the wind did not blow inside. Because of that, for a while, George felt as though this entrance opening to the outside was a dream or an illusion, and he couldn't accept it as real.
さあ行くぞ。ついてまいる。
Bato gently floated upwards. It was a natural action, like that of a diver enjoying an underwater stroll. It made it easy to believe that if you acted like she did, you too might be able to float in the sky, just as though you were swimming in the water. Well, who am I to say no to this? Alley-oop! You know, everything was great. Until gravity was discovered. Things went downhill after that. No, George did believe that. So, without thinking, just as she had done, he also, gently, as though swimming in the water, he moved his feet.
やるではないか。わらわが説明するよりも早く空を舞うことを覚えたか。
George was shocked to find himself floating in midair like he was swimming. Of course, Bato was also shocked that George, who should have been unacquainted with magic, had learned how to do that just by instinct.
空が飛べるなんて泳げるなんて。
理屈を考えてはならぬ。それが自然なことであると受け入れる。ニュートンとかアインシュタインとか人間たちの競技を思い出してはならぬぞ。
Yeah, I cannot say that I have a good relationship with them.
特に高き空を飛んでいるときはな。墜落する未熟な魔女も時におる。
あるがままを受けあるがままを受け入れる。
George repeated those words over and over. He must not deny magic, no matter what. To deny that would be the same as to throw away what might be his first and last chance to revive Shana. Also, you know, from this height, it could also die if you stop believing in magic at this point, so good luck with that, George. However, compared to Bato, who was elegantly drifting like smoke, George's movements were clearly similar to someone underwater. Therefore, if he didn't make a movement like kicking his feet in water every once in a while, he would be slowly dragged down by the force of gravity.
わらわが初めて空を舞った時よりは上出来であると褒めておこう。行くぞ。ついてまいれ。
Bato beckoned to George and gently flew into the stormy sky. It was just like a scene from a fairy tale. The scene unfolding before George's eyes felt entirely like an extension of his dream.
空を飛べるのはすごいけど、すごい風と雨だ。
なんだ、雨と風に苛まれるのか。それを防ぐ魔法を教えてもよいが、今のそなたには早いし、今はそれを習う時間を割くのも惜しかろう。
ええ、僕が必要としている魔法はそれじゃない。
Without losing to the wind and rain, George wore a strong-willed gaze.
見えてきたぞ、屋敷だ。もう少し頑張れよ。今落ちればバラの茂みだぞ。
The undulating rose garden was spread beneath the witch and George's gaze. This fantasy-like scene no longer surprised George. Only the gradually approaching mansion was reflected in his eyes.
待ってて。必ず君を蘇らせてみせる。
Meanwhile, the cruel new witch could be seen staring at the guest house from a different location.
あと残すは第7第8の番だけね。あと2人で先代のババアの義理はおしまいだわ。クラウスと夏日を殺す。夫婦仲良くね。
にひ、標的はどうかに。ゲストハウス1階ロビーにて標的2名と後ろ宮エヴァを捕捉。半魔法力測定。410へデータリンク。410データ受領。半魔法力は極めて小。エヴァさえ席を外せばまな板の上のマグロにアワビです。にひひひ。いかがしますか、大ベアトリーチェ卿。ご命令をいただければすぐにも狙撃いたします。どうかご命令を。
ほんとにあんたたちは便利な家具ね。死体を恥じるしか能のない中古家具どもとは大違いだわねえ。シエスタ姉妹、またあなたたちの手際を見せてちょうだい。攻撃準備よ。死体はまた運び出してね。たっぷり遊んであげるんだから。文句はなしよ、ロノウェイ。
はい、かしこまりました。
At that time, the witch noticed something, as though some presence had disappeared. Was it her imagination?
今、何か気配を感じなかった？
No, sorry. Don't mind me. I'm just flying above the rose gardens. Just go back and look at the guest house.
誰か感じた人いる？
申し訳ありません。私は何も気づきませんでした。お許しを。私たちゲストハウスを観測中でしたから周辺監視はオフにしてます。にひ。ルシファーちゃんは何か気配感じた？
Just an instant, Lucifer sent a glance at Ronoe, questioning whether she should answer honestly or not. Ronoe gave a small nod in response.
いいえ、申し訳ございません、ベアトリーチェ様。私たちは何も。中古家具ゆえ、愚鈍なことをお許しください。
そう。大悪魔のあなたがそう言うなら、きっと私の気のせいなんでしょうね。
The witch stared persistently in the direction the president had disappeared to. And that was the direction of the rose garden. And beyond that, she could see the mansion's dark silhouette created by lightning. It took her quite some time before she pushed her unsatisfied feelings aside, and once again turned to face the guest house. The guest house lobby had been engulfed by silence. The strings of tension which bound Kraus, Nazi, and Eva had already loosened. They were completely tired, and their cautiousness was beginning to waver. Every once in a while, they would stand up and walk around pointlessly, fighting their drowsiness.
大丈夫ですか、エヴァさん。やはり無理をせず休んでいてください。大丈夫だって言ってるわ。もう大人は私たち3人しかいないのよ。休んでる暇なんかないわ。
石にかじりついてでもここを死守するわよ。
She spoke a brave line, but she couldn't hide her rough breathing. It seemed that the fever, which had been calmed with medicine for a time, had returned. It was very obvious that Eva's condition was not good.
無理はするな。せめて目を閉じていたまえ。もし起こさねばならぬ時は必ず起こしてやるから。
だから平気だって言ってるわ。放っておいて。
It seemed that she had now become stubborn. Kraus and Natsuki realized that no matter what else they said to her, in her current state, it wouldn't reach her. It wouldn't reach her ears. So they decided to say nothing more, and to let her be. To Eva right now, even an argument like that was putting a burden on her. It would probably be better for her if she just sat there with her mouth closed. As a matter of fact, Eva was already on the point of succumbing to her drowsiness. She might have talked back with a temper because she was trying to encourage herself and throw off her sleepiness. The clock would very soon be pointed to 6 in the afternoon. And because she had been snacking over and over again to full her drowsiness, she didn't feel hungry. Instead, her lack of sleep made it feel like it was 6 in the morning rather than the afternoon. Even supposing that the boat would come at precisely 9 in the morning tomorrow, there were still more than 12 full hours to go. That was a dizzyingly long stretch of time. Long, painful, hot. Even the sound of the clock torments my body now. In times like this, he would put his hand on my forehead, and the fever would always fade at once. But he isn't here anymore. As Eva's mind grew foggy, she was once again gripped by a deep sadness. She had already cried herself dry. Even so, the sadness from losing her beloved husband had not been exhausted.
私は間違っていたんだわ。
どうして？
Originally, the new witch had been the same being as Eva. If Eva talked to her, she would always respond.
私は後宮家の当主の座さえ得られれば、それで満足のはずだった。それがあの黄金の山を見た途端に欲が増えたの。あの黄金の山を独り占めしたい気持ちに駆られた。
それは恥じることでも何でもないわ。だって後宮家の当主として当然の権利じゃない。他の誰にも黄金のひとかけらだって譲るものかってのよ。
私がその誘惑にとらわれたからあなたが生まれてしまったんだわ。あなたは私の少女時代の心であると同時に自分勝手でしかない私のよこしまな心でもあった。そのあなたがあの黄金の山によって芽生えた私の愚かな欲望のせいで私の胸という卵の殻を破りこの世に生まれ出てしまった。あなたを産んだのは私の責任。
なら私が殺したローザとマリアも、そしてルドルフとキリエと秀吉もあなたの責任ってことになるわ。
Oh, great. Now you're gonna use that kind of logic, eh?
どうしてうちの人まで殺したのよ。どうして
秀吉を殺す気はなかったわ。だってうるさくてしつこかったんだもの。その意味では私たちの、いえ、あなたの責任ね。
Oh, don't pin the blame on Eva, goddammit.
あんなのを旦那に選んだあなたの責任だわ。
あなたみたいな子供にあの人の良さはわからないわよ。あな
たちは魔法で夢を叶えたのよ。碑文の謎を解いたわ。そして黄金を見つけ、当主の指輪を手にしたわ。すべての夢を叶えきったわ。
Yeah, but at what cost?
それがなんで不満なの？
それだけが全ての夢なんかじゃないわ。あの人と素敵な人生を歩んで、ジョージに素晴らしい人生を託す。妻として、母として。私にはまだ叶えなければならない夢がたくさんあるのよ。それなのに、
それはあなたが大人になってから勝手に増やした夢だわ。私たちの夢じゃない。
だからあなたは子供なのよ。自分さえ良ければいいの？そうよ。全て私が悪いのよ。あの時ローザの言うことにどうして私は反抗したの？